My wife leaned in close one night, her breath brushing my ear, and whispered words that froze my veins. "Your family hates you, but they love me." I stared at her, stunned, waiting for the cruel punchline. But she didn't stop. Her next sentence hit harder than any betrayal I had ever imagined. That was the moment I realized the woman I shared a bed with wasn't just my wife. She was holding the knife aimed straight at my back. My name is Nathan, and for most of my 36 years, I believed I had built a life worth being proud of. I wasn't rich by any stretch, but I had carved out something stable: a modest house in the suburbs, a reliable job as a project manager for a mid-sized construction company, and a marriage that I thought, foolishly, was built on trust. My parents raised me on the values of hard work and loyalty. I was the oldest son, the one expected to set the example, the one who quietly paid the bills when my younger brother fell short, the one who smoothed over arguments when family gatherings got tense. Family had always been my compass. Even when there were cracks, my father's stern silences, my mother's tendency to side with my siblings over me, I still believed blood meant something. That belief was part of why I fell so hard for Elena. She wasn't just beautiful, though she was that in a way that made heads turn. She was charismatic, charming, magnetic in a way I never was. She could walk into a room full of strangers and have them laughing within minutes. Next to her, I always felt quieter, steadier, like the dependable shadow to her spotlight, and I thought that balance worked. For 8 years, we played the part of a normal couple. She worked in marketing, and I admired how effortlessly she navigated people, how quickly she built connections. At family dinners, my parents would praise her cooking. My siblings would crowd around her stories, and I'd just smile, proud that the woman I loved fit so seamlessly into the family I sometimes struggled to connect with. Still, there were moments. Little things I brushed aside. My mother complimenting Elena's dress, while barely acknowledging the promotion I had just earned. My sister calling Elena for advice about her boyfriend, while ignoring my texts. My brother joking that Elena was the real catch of the family. Each moment pricked, but I swallowed it. Because what else was I supposed to do? I told myself it didn't matter if I wasn't the favorite, as long as we were together. But marriage is funny. It's not the grand gestures that reveal the truth. It's the whispers in the dark, the quiet confessions when you least expect them. That night when Elena leaned in close and told me my own family hated me but adored her, something inside me shifted. It wasn't just the words, it was the cold certainty in her voice, the way she looked at me not with pity but with triumph. Like she had won a game I didn't even know we were playing, and maybe she had. Because in that moment, I realized she wasn't just reflecting the family dynamic I had ignored for years. She was using it, turning their affection for her into a weapon against me. I didn't say anything right away. I just lay there in the dark, my chest tight, staring at the ceiling, knowing the life I thought was safe was about to unravel, thread by thread. The morning after Elena whispered those words, I woke up feeling like I had been shoved out of my own skin. She acted normal, too normal. She hummed while making coffee, scrolled through her phone with that careless smile, and kissed my cheek before heading out for work. Not a trace of the venom she'd slipped into my ear the night before. I wanted to tell myself I'd imagined it, that maybe I'd misheard, but the look in her eyes, that wasn't a dream. It was deliberate. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing things I'd been too blind or too trusting to see. My family had always gravitated toward Elena, but now it felt like they were orbiting her, leaving me out in the cold. At Sunday dinner, my mother sat beside her instead of me, leaning in close like they were lifelong friends. My father, usually stoic, actually laughed at one of her jokes. My brother asked her to review his resume because she just had better instincts about people. And when I tried to join in, silence, dismissive nods, conversations that moved past me like I wasn't there. One night, my sister Paige called, not to talk to me, but to ask if Elena was free to help her shop for a bridal shower gift. When I reminded Paige that I was her brother, she laughed and said, "Yeah, but Elena actually knows what people like." Then she hung up, leaving me staring at my phone, heat crawling up my neck. I confronted Elena about it later. She sat on the edge of our bed, calmly painting her nails. As I asked if she noticed how my family treated me, she didn't even look up. "Maybe they just feel more comfortable with me," she said. "Comfortable?" I repeated. "I'm their son, their brother. And yet somehow I'm the outsider in my own family." That's when she glanced at me, finally looked at me, with that same half smile she wore the night of her whisper. "Maybe you should ask yourself why that is." Her words hit harder than I expected, because some part of me had been asking, had I been too serious? Too quiet? Too unlikable? My family always seemed to prefer people who sparkled, and I wasn't that guy. I was the one who showed up on time, paid his share, cleaned up after the party, the responsible one, the reliable one, the one no one noticed until something broke, and Elena knew it. The cracks widened at Thanksgiving. We hosted that year, and I spent hours prepping the turkey, basting it, checking the oven, making sure everything came out perfect. Elena barely touched the bird, but when dinner was served, my mother raised her glass and said, "To Elena, for pulling this all together so beautifully." Everyone clinked glasses, smiling at her. No one looked at me, not even once. I swallowed the bitterness. But Elena caught my eye from across the table. She raised her own glass with the faintest smirk, as if daring me to correct the record. I didn't. I couldn't. Because deep down I knew if I said anything, they'd side with her. They always did. That night, as I washed dishes alone while Elena laughed with my siblings in the living room, I felt it again. The knife she held, steady, patient, waiting for the moment she could twist it deeper. Christmas Eve at my parents' house was supposed to be sacred. For years, it had been the one night we all came together, no matter what had happened during the year. I drove Elena there with a tightness in my chest, already bracing myself for the subtle jabs and the silent treatment I'd grown used to. But that night, it wasn't subtle. It was a spectacle. The living room was lit with soft golden lights, the tree heavy with ornaments collected over decades. My father poured wine, my mother fussed with her famous gingerbread cookies, and Elena? She was holding court. When I walked in carrying 2 heavy bags of gifts, Elena didn't even glance my way. Instead, she was seated between my mother and sister, telling some story about how she had to rescue Nathan again when I misplaced an important bill. Everyone laughed. It wasn't true. I had been the one to remind her weeks ago to pay a bill she'd forgotten. But they didn't question it. They just laughed harder, as if the image of me as incompetent was more believable than the truth. I set the bags down too hard, and the sound snapped a few heads around. My father frowned. "Careful, Nathan. Don't break anything." Elena smirked at me over the rim of her wineglass, her eyes glinting in the twinkle lights. The evening went downhill from there. During dinner, my brother brought up how Elena had given him great advice on negotiating his salary. He raised his glass to toast her, not me. My mother chimed in about how Elena had been a godsend with holiday planning. My sister leaned in and whispered something to Elena that made them both laugh. And when I asked what was so funny, Paige said, "Don't worry, Nathan. It's nothing you'd get. It was like I wasn't even there." But the moment that truly broke me came later, when we gathered around the fireplace for the annual family photo. My mother handed Elena the prime spot, center of the couch, flanked by Paige and Aaron. I was left standing awkwardly at the edge, half cut out of the frame. I forced a smile, the kind that makes your cheeks ache. But Elena wasn't done. As the photographer, my cousin, counted down, Elena leaned just close enough for me to hear, her lips barely moving. "See? They don't even want you in the picture." The camera flashed, capturing my stunned face, the frozen half-smile. Everyone laughed afterward, talking about how wonderful the photo turned out. No one noticed the way my hand curled into a fist at my side. No one saw the storm building behind my eyes. Driving home that night, Elena sat in the passenger seat scrolling through her phone, humming along to Christmas songs on the radio. Finally, she looked at me and said, almost sweetly, "You should be grateful, Nathan. I've given your family something to actually love." I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just about me feeling left out, it was about control, manipulation, betrayal. And as the snow fell in heavy silence outside, I made a promise to myself. One day soon, Elena would regret underestimating me. The ride home from my parents' house replayed in my mind for days. Every laugh at my expense, every glance exchanged over my head, every word Elena whispered like a dagger. I didn't sleep well that week. I'd lie in bed beside her, listening to her slow, steady breathing, and wonder how I had ended up here, married to someone who seemed to thrive on cutting me down. But here's the thing about pain. After a while, it hardens into something sharper. Not rage, not self-pity, something colder. By the third sleepless night, I wasn't asking myself, why me, anymore. I was asking, how do I end this without losing everything? Elena thought she had me cornered, and in a way she did. She had my family wrapped around her finger, painting herself as the competent, charming savior, while I was cast as the clumsy fool. She'd positioned herself perfectly. If I lashed out, I'd look like the unstable husband jealous of his wife's connection to his own blood. But Elena underestimated me. The shift started small. I began observing her the way I used to troubleshoot machines at work, quietly, systematically. Every time she slipped up, I made a mental note. Every story she told about helping me that wasn't true, I wrote down in a notebook I kept hidden in my desk drawer. Every time she spent hours locked in a call with one of my siblings, or lingered after family gatherings, I marked it. Then I started gathering evidence. Elena wasn't careful with her phone. She trusted me too much, convinced I was too oblivious or too beaten down to notice. But when she left it charging in the kitchen one night, I scrolled. Not too much, just enough. Screenshots of messages where she vented about me to my own family. Lines like, "Don't worry, I'll handle Nathan. He always caves." Or worse, "Honestly, I think he's the reason this family never really worked. But they see me, they appreciate me." I sent the screenshots to a secure email I'd created under a new name, then deleted the evidence from her phone, leaving no trace. It didn't stop there. I pulled bank statements, too. I discovered small charges, subscriptions, gifts, even dinners, that she'd framed as expenses for both of us, but were clearly just for her and her new circle of allies. My sister Paige, my brother Aaron, sometimes even my parents. Little dinners, little outings, all on my dime. Piece by piece, the picture became clear. This wasn't just about my wife whispering cruel things in the dark. This was about her systematically rewriting the narrative of my life, with my family cheering her on. One evening, while Elena chatted loudly on the phone in the living room, I sat in the study staring at the growing folder of evidence. My heart didn't race anymore. My hands didn't shake. Instead, I felt calm, like I finally had direction. I remembered something my grandfather once told me when teaching me chess. The player who looks like they're losing is often the one setting the trap. Elena thought she had me pinned, but all she'd done was make me patient, careful, ready. The day after Christmas, while Elena bragged to my mother about how she had reorganized our bills to keep Nathan from messing them up, I was sitting across town with a lawyer, laying everything out: the financial misuse, the manipulative messages, the systematic isolation. The lawyer listened, her pen moving steadily across her pad. When I finished, she looked at me and said, "You've got more leverage than you think." Walking out of that office, snow crunching under my boots, I felt something I hadn't in months. Control. And once you've tasted control after being humiliated, you don't let it go. The first week of January was brutal. Cold winds cut across the streets, the kind that bit through jackets and gloves. But for me, the chill wasn't outside. It was inside my own home. Elena carried herself like a queen who had already won the war. She'd whisper sly remarks when we were alone. "Your parents called me today. Funny how they never ask for you anymore." or she'd place a hand on my shoulder at family gatherings, speaking loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Don't worry, I've got this handled." Nathan means well, but you know how he is. Each comment chipped away at the old me, the man who once doubted himself. But now, instead of breaking, I recorded, logged, stored. My lawyer had told me to be methodical. Don't lash out. Don't give her the chance to flip the script. Collect, prepare, and when the time comes, let the facts speak louder than emotions. So I played the part. At dinners, I nodded quietly. At home, I acted distracted, subdued, even a little broken. Elena thrived on the illusion of control, and the more convinced she became that I was defeated, the less careful she grew. It was almost too easy. The drive to my parents' house was silent. Except for Elena's occasional hums, she scrolled her phone, no doubt curating captions for the brunch photos she expected to post later. I kept my eyes on the road, my pulse steady, rehearsing the words I'd waited too long to say. When we arrived, the house was buzzing with familiar chaos. My sisters were already there with their kids, voices bouncing off the walls. My mother fussed over a casserole in the kitchen while my father poured drinks. Everyone greeted Elena with smiles and warmth, like a daughter returning home. When their eyes flicked to me, the smiles thinned, polite but distant. "Glad you could make it, Nathan," Dad said. "Elena's been telling us how busy you've been." "Don't work yourself into the ground, son." I caught the faint disapproval laced in his tone, the suggestion that my wife was keeping the family updated while I failed to. Elena leaned into my arm and whispered, "See? They trust me more than you, I let it slide. For now." We gathered around the long oak table, plates clattering, voices weaving into the familiar fabric of family chatter. Elena sparkled in the center of it all, laughing at my brother-in-law's jokes, complimenting Mom's cooking, passing bread like she'd been born to belong. Halfway through the meal, Mom raised her glass. "To Elena," she said warmly, "for always being such a blessing to this family." Everyone clinked glasses, everyone but me. That was my cue. I cleared my throat. "Actually," I began, my voice calm but cutting through the chatter, "there's something I need to say. Something that can't wait." The room quieted. Forks paused mid-air. Elena's smile faltered for just a second. Then she slipped back into her polished mask. "Of course, Nathan," she said sweetly. "What's on your mind?" I reached down, opened my briefcase, and set the binder on the table. The snap of its cover sounded louder than it should have. "What's on my mind," I said evenly, "is the truth. And it's about time we all saw it." I flipped the binder open, sliding the first set of papers across the table, printouts of Elena's messages to my family. Screenshots of conversations where she belittled me, dismissed me, whispered poison like, "Nathan doesn't really understand finances, but I'll make sure everything's covered." My sisters leaned in, eyes narrowing. Mom frowned, confusion creeping across her face. Elena laughed softly. "Nathan, this is unnecessary. They don't need to see private conversations." "Private?" I cut in, my voice sharper now. "These weren't private. They were coordinated. Every word designed to erode my place here, while elevating yours." I turned to my father. "Did you know that every transfer marked support from Elena was actually from my accounts? That every bill she helped cover was money I earned, funneled through her hands so it looked like she was the generous one?" Dad's eyes widened. He glanced at Elena, who opened her mouth. But no words came. I flipped to the next section. Bank statements, highlighted transfers, proof of withdrawals tied to her gifts. $42,000 over the last 3 years, I said flatly. My money? Presented as hers. And not once did anyone question why I seemed absent while she played the savior. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Finally, Mom spoke, her voice trembling. "Elena, is this true?" Elena's mask cracked. "They were our accounts. What's his is mine, what's mine is his. That's marriage." "No," I said coldly, "a marriage is partnership." This was theft dressed as generosity. And you didn't stop there, did you? I slid the final set of documents across the table, emails she'd sent to a real estate agent, inquiring about properties in her name only, financed with joint funds. My sisters gasped. My father's jaw clenched. Mom pressed a hand to her chest. Elena's voice rose, brittle and sharp. "You're twisting this!" "You've always been paranoid, Nathan. Everyone here knows how difficult you can be. That's why they come to me, because you're— Enough!" The words shot out of me like a bullet, and for the first time, Elena froze. My voice had weight now. Final. Unshakable. I looked around the table at each face staring back at me. You wanted me invisible. You wanted them to believe I was nothing, but today, they see you, and they see me. No more shadows, no more whispers. The silence stretched thick with betrayal and disbelief. Then my father spoke, his voice low but firm. "Elena, I think you should leave." Her eyes widened in shock. "What? You can't be serious. I've done everything for this family." Mom looked away. My sisters exchanged glances. Uneasy, the spell finally breaking. I stood, sliding the binder back into my briefcase. "You're right about one thing, Elena," I said quietly. "My family did love you." But love built on lies collapses fast. Elena's face twisted with fury, but no words came. She pushed back from the table, grabbed her purse, and stormed out, the door slamming behind her. The room stayed silent long after she left. My mother's eyes glistened, but she said nothing. My father sat rigid, hands clasped tight. For once, no one rushed to fill the silence with excuses, because the truth didn't need commentary, it just needed daylight. The silence after Elena's departure lingered, like smoke after a fire. No one reached for food. No one tried to restart the conversation. The clatter of silverware and the hum of family chatter, the things that usually filled these Sunday brunches, were gone. All that remained was the weight of truth. Heavy and undeniable. I sat back down slowly, my ribs tight with the kind of exhaustion that comes not from work but from years of carrying something too heavy. My mother was the first to speak. Her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. "Nathan, why didn't you tell us sooner?" I looked at her, the woman who had raised me, the woman who had clung to Elena's every word while mine faded into the background. "Because you wouldn't have believed me," I said simply. "And maybe I wouldn't have believed me either. Not until I saw just how far she was willing to go." My father rubbed his temples, the lines on his forehead deepening. She played us all. God help me, I thought she was good for you." "For all of us. She wanted you to think that," I replied. "She wanted everyone to see her as the savior, while I was the failure." She whispered in your ears until my silence felt like proof. My sisters didn't say much. One kept staring at the binder like it was a loaded gun. The other looked at me with something between guilt and pity. Neither defended Elena. And that was enough. I gathered my things, ready to leave. But just as I reached the door, my father called out, "Nathan." I paused. His voice was steady, though low. "Thank you for showing us it wasn't an apology, not yet. But it was a crack in the wall that had stood between us for too long." I nodded once and walked out. The drive home felt different. The streets I'd driven 1,000 times looked unfamiliar, as though I was seeing them for the first time. Elena's perfume still clung faintly to the upholstery, but the passenger seat was empty, and for the first time in years it didn't feel wrong. It felt like space. Room to breathe. When I pulled into the driveway, I didn't rush inside. I sat in the car for a long time, watching the sun cut through the gray clouds, scattering light across the windshield. It felt symbolic. Cliché even. But I didn't care. Sometimes the clichés are true. Inside, the house was quiet. Her shoes by the door, her jacket on the hook, her perfume bottles in the bathroom, all of it was still there. Relics of a life we had built together. Or rather, the life I had built while she quietly sharpened her knife. I didn't touch anything. Not yet. I just sat on the edge of the bed we had once shared and let the silence settle around me. It didn't feel like emptiness. It felt like reclamation. In the days that followed, the fallout spread, like ripples on water. Elena tried calling dozens of times. Each message shifted tones. Apologies, anger, bargaining, threats. At one point she wrote, "You ruined everything. They'll never forgive you for humiliating them like that." But she was wrong. I hadn't humiliated them. I had freed them, freed myself. My father called me 2 days later, not for money, not for advice, just to ask if I was okay. The words felt strange coming from him, as though he was relearning how to speak them. My mother texted me the next morning, not with gossip, not with updates, but with a photo of her garden blooming. "You should come by sometime," she wrote. "We'd like to talk." It wasn't reconciliation, not fully, but it was a beginning. A fragile one, yes, but a beginning nonetheless. Elena, on the other hand, didn't stop. She tried rallying support. Some friends took her side briefly, but truth travels faster than lies when proof is involved. Screenshots surfaced, her mask slipped in other places, with other people. Eventually, even those who once admired her began to see her for what she was. And me? I focused on breathing again, on rebuilding not just trust in others, but trust in myself. I went back to the garage where my old tools still sat covered in dust. Fixing things had always calmed me, given me a sense of control when life felt chaotic. This time, the thing I was fixing wasn't a machine. It was me. Weeks later, I returned to my parents' house. Not for brunch, not for Elena, but for myself. My mother hugged me tighter than she had in years. My father looked me in the eye with something I hadn't seen in a long time: respect. My sisters didn't mention Elena at all. For once, I wasn't invisible at the table. Over coffee, my father asked me quietly, "Do you regret it? Exposing her like that?" I thought about it, about the pain, the silence, the years lost to manipulation and doubt. Then I shook my head. No, the only regret I have is waiting this long. And that's the truth I carry with me now. When Elena whispered those words, "Your family hates you, but they love me," she thought she had won. She thought she had stripped me of my place, my power, my worth. But she underestimated one thing: the strength of a man who has nothing left to lose but the truth. The truth doesn't just cut, it cleanses. It strips away the rot until only what's real remains. So if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: sometimes betrayal doesn't break you. Sometimes it wakes you up. And once you wake up, you don't fall back asleep. Not for her, not for anyone. Is.